First and foremost, everybody, I want to just apologize really quick for the audio quality. I just simply can't seem to locate my USB cable for my condenser mic right now. Bear with me, we will find it. As I said in my previous video, I lived life without pretty much access to the outside world for the most part, digitally at least, for the better part of 2 years. I had no internet access. I quite literally lost a connection in my personal life for quite a bit because of it, and it really sucked, but I had to bear through the storm. I went from being in a position where I knew I couldn't afford internet at the time to a position where I could possibly afford it. But when I went to go sign up for it, I had some previous debt I wasn't necessarily aware about because of events that I will now talk about. Um, Basically, I'm just talking about the lead up to this point. So in total, it's been about 3 years' time since I've made a proper YouTube video. Almost to the day. We're just a few days away. Basically, where we left off, you guys were probably aware that I was married at a certain point. I don't want to throw around harsh terms in a public space. I will just say, I think I was done wrong, and things happened to me that did not deserve to happen to me. Um, but it ended eventually. There was a separation, and this weird month we tried to live together but be apart, and I just couldn't do it, and I don't think they could do it either. So I just decided to move out of the apartment completely by December 2021. And that really started the next leg of my life. I lived the next few months at my dad and stepmother's house, and just kind of going through the early stages of going through a divorce and whatnot. Um, and it was really kind of a confusing time because as part of that unfairness, my finances really took a hit. Um, I think that perhaps someone was not so forthcoming and how the funds were being spent. But after that point, I didn't really want to return to YouTube because I had spent so much time. I mean, guys, honestly, my entire early 20s were wasted investing in this thing. I was married, and I got married young. I got married at 23 years old. So I think I was just kind of living life like a normal person in their mid-20s should. So, honestly, once I turned 25, though, my life as I knew it flipped upside down. Um, the normal conventions of my life were previously very toxic, and all of them in the past 2 or so years have been challenged and broken. Whether those questions were posed by people in my past or life events changed my perspective on something. And yes, my smoke detector is low on battery. I know I need to change it. Please, God, I don't need 15 comments about that. I don't know if it was the conditions mentally were really prime for this person, because remember, I've pretty much come out of a 4-year abusive connection with someone essentially, and I fell in love with this person, and it kind of came at a good opportunity, I suppose, because I needed to move out by April, and I met this person in early March. I needed to be completely out of the house by late April. And my finances were still really poor, so my credit was really bad, so there was no chance of securing a place of my own. No chance at all. So I basically, over the next few months, moved in with that person. And it went really well at first, and I won't say much about the person's background or anything. It was a tough one, and basically, like, the sibling had to move in with us, and I think at first it was going pretty well, but by like May of 2022, things were just starting to fall apart. Um, and when things were good, they were great. It was probably still one of my favorite relationships to have had been in, I think, if I look back on it. At the same time, there's like a lot of stuff I didn't like, you know. And then we had some really unfortunate circumstances unfold later on in our relationship, probably like a month or a little over a month after that event. And I still regret, how I mishandled that situation entirely. I, it took me a long time to see what that person was saying. And when they said, like, you have a lot of issues with pride, I had a hard time believing it at first. Just a really hard time believing it. And I think looking back, maybe they were right. I think my pride and my stubbornness went hand in hand, and it kind of prevented me from being able to do a lot of things or setting aside a lot of feelings or whatever the case may be. Um, so that kind of kickstarts me living here. I moved in here by a total miracle. Um, Basically what had happened was me and the person I was just talking about, everybody in this house got COVID. It's the only time, to my knowledge, that I've had COVID. I felt sick in December and tested myself, but it must have been a gnarly sinus infection. But I got COVID in August of 2022. Or maybe even really late July 2022. And on my peak day of COVID symptoms, that person decided to tell me that we were going to break up. And, that time I held my composure pretty well. And I think in retrospect, the right thing to do and the noble thing to do would have just to have basically walked away at that point. But we reconciled. Maybe it was just a second wind. And this sucks because at this point in my life, in that chunk of 6 months, I had to basically uproot my entire life and move all my belongings to another location. I got this place by mere chance. I spent an entire day basically thinking I was going to be jobless or possibly having a job and living out of my car at like a rest area off the interstate. But my friend, I actually met her through my ex-wife, and I always respected her because she was like the only one of her friends that was bold enough to make an independent relationship with me. And I think I put like a pity party post on Facebook because I was like, well, my life's going to hell. I'm sitting here on a grassy patch on like a piece of stone just in the middle of a lawn. Been walking for like 15 hours straight and my soul's hurt because I'm on my bare feet. COVID positive, KN95 mask on, crying in the summer heat. But she came along and backdoored me, essentially, into this apartment complex. There were certain stipulations with the previous tenant, and they weren't able to sublease it out, so they just gave it to me. And then I just officially took over the lease come the next year, and this is now my second year, but I would really like it to be my last year. But it was really crazy. It was a hard time getting settled in here. You know, literally, it was weird how me and that person broke up. I won't get into details, but I kept choking. I just couldn't have like these conversations to make things right. I just kind of go silent. And since having lived alone for a long amount of time now and having to fend for myself, it's not really a hard issue for me anymore. But at the time, I really hadn't had this type of experience, and I just couldn't do it. I don't know what was going on. I had like a lot of anxiety about saying the wrong things, I think, and it was just all around a bad time when it would happen. But we ended that night um, sleeping in different areas of that person's house, and I actually walked the next morning before I even talked to my partner. I walked over here to the office and got myself put on the lease and basically began my life here. And I had to keep a cover story for like a little bit. I really admire this place as like a place to start. It's a really nice place to start. As far as growth and development goes, probably a lot, but centered around like Chicago tourism, like come by a summer cottage type of thing. So I feel like I've pretty quickly outgrown it. But at a time, it was a whole world to explore. Even when I was with that ex, I was pretty much walking around all day. Um, you know, I think I was physically manifesting, like walking away from my fears of failure and being like a loser, but I wanted out of an industry that I'd been in for so long. So I just kind of made a rash decision and quit and tried to find remote work. I really wanted to do remote work at the time. And I couldn't find anything. And I had gotten a job through my ex. So when we actually broke up, I was still going to work because I needed to get paid, but it was just a seasonal job. But it sucked, like getting broken up with a person like you felt really deeply about, and then being coworkers and pretending like you didn't just live like an entire life with someone. It was hard. It was really rough at first. Those were the hardest like drags of hours of time in my life because I felt like I kept playing this game like trying to peak because we worked on the shoreline of like an inland lake not too far away from a great lake, and it was like a boardwalk, and their station was like on the opposite end of the boardwalk of mine. I was like basically a boat hauler in a boat, not a tracker, but I was in high water like pulling boats back shore, but like kayaks and stuff, not like paddle boats or tom boats or something. It was rough. It was kind of a pretty physical job. But it was a beautiful scenery, so I guess it equaled out. But in those times, I felt like I kept finding myself, especially early on, like trying to peek in and see if I could possibly see from far away if they were possibly trying to catch a glimpse of me or if they missed me or something. That was really tough. And, my season was a little longer than theirs, so when I finally made the connection, like, oh, they're never gonna be here anymore, I realized, like, wow, I'm gonna probably never bump into this person again. And for the most part, that was true, except for like a few times maybe I saw them in traffic. But as far as an in-person body encounter, like, no, it probably wasn't gonna happen again. Sorry, y'all. I just didn't want to wear the headphones anymore, and I had to go to use the restroom real quick, so I apologize. Anyways, to stop meandering, I took a lot of walks. I was really new to the city at the time, and it was just fun. It was a new place to explore. I really like to get in there on my feet and explore like a new place if I drop in there. Um, so I had this whole place that I had a lot of time, it seemed, to memorize. But I think that's really what started like my fitness, was like going on these walks a lot. I don't lift anymore. I went on like 3 pretty big waves of like bodybuilding in the past 2 years, but I'm more interested in cardio. I think that's what matters the most. But I think after a while, and this is really like a pathetic admission on my part, but hey, when you feel down and when you feel like you have a broken heart, you pretty much do a lot. A lot you didn't think you would do before. Perhaps out of desperation to console those feelings, whatever it may be, but you're probably going to do something goofy. And I think my thing was I took a lot of walks because I think secretly I wanted to like walk by my ex driving past me so I could just see them again, because I miss them so much. And that might even be borderline creepy. It's not like I was walking all the way to their house. And that's a big boundary I put up going forward after I was with this person. It was like I was never going to put myself in a position where I was going to go by their property. And I was pretty good about following that. But that's about it, I really had to wake up to the fact that this person wasn't in my life anymore and I was going to have to move forward. And it was going to be tough, and I got to tell you guys, it was a really tough time going after that point. I started to actually feel a little bit better in October of 2022, but really early into November, like 2022, just a few days before my 26th birthday, like some words were said about me that I didn't necessarily appreciate, and it really hurt a long time, and it took me a long time to get over that, because I always needed like that closure. My marriage didn't end well, but at least I somewhat got closure towards the end. As far as that person, I was pretty much out again, and I had to move in somewhere new and just immediately drop into a new life. It was scary. I had a lot of debt, and over time I was able to pay those things off, but I didn't know. I wasn't so confident that this was going to work for a while. But I landed another seasonal job pushing energy assistance applications into the government system for my state. And I originally thought I'd have that job until May of 2023. And that job started in September. But for like 32 days straight, I worked full-time shifts. That sucked so much. But that ended right before Columbus Day weekend because I didn't work for the government, but I worked for an agency that was basically indirectly working for the government, so we observed government holidays, and I got them paid, which was pretty sick for like a seasonal job. So I got like a really nice 3-day weekend in really early autumn, so the temperature was still pretty reasonable, and I just kind of chilled out in the apartment all day, like started to try to make it into a home. And, I have really fond memories of that weekend, but I also remember towards the end just like not feeling so excited with life for a certain point. But then after like those words were said about me, it was just all hell broke loose, and I felt like for months. And it was like embarrassing, and I had conversations about things with people I should have never had to have conversations with them about. It just seemed like a cheap shot. And at the time, I felt like maybe they thought I was doing really well and maybe better than them. And they were just playing dirty. Now I feel like they kind of felt vindicated at a certain time to say the things that they say, or vindictive. I don't know. But it sucked either way. It took a long time to get over that, especially never being able to have words with that person again. It just really sucked, you know. So one of my best friends and I dubbed the next few months like the winter of sadness. And it really sucked. We were both in a position, but we had each other, and he used to hang out here pretty much the entire weekend, every weekend, starting on Friday night. We had some really good times. I'll never forget it. Probably a highlight of living here. But going into spring of 2023, a lot of stuff changed. That sort of government job that I had, well, what they don't really mention in the orientation, but they put in the fine print, is that they can pretty much end your contract at any time. Basically going along the lines of like budget concerns. You know, they had some salaried yearly employees, but for the most part, it's basically just seasonal paperwork pushers. And I ended up getting my contract ended on February 2nd. So far earlier than what I had planned before. But they told me sometime in mid-January, so I had a lot of time to kind of prep and find something. And I went through this insanely long hiring process with this like home improvement contractor as like a salesperson, rehash in-house salesperson, which I basically send the spam calls out, like the, oh my god, like why is this place calling me still, like please just leave me alone, get the hint. Yeah, I'm the annoying guy that's calling those people in that position to try to make a sale on like a roofing repair or brand new shingles, etc. Well, I had like 2 weeks to myself in February. They sucked. I caught feelings for someone over the internet that lived like 2 hours away, and then I realized it was just impossible for this to be stable. And I just kind of stopped texting them one day, and they never texted me back, and that just ended. And I didn't really pursue dating or anything after that point for a really long time. But those 2 weeks were pretty bad because I formed and broke off or ghosted from that relationship, plus feeling bad about ghosting someone. And I just felt like a jobless loser. And they totally lowballed me and put me on like this probationary wage of like $10 an hour. And I could hardly keep up paying up just the rent alone on this place at a certain point in my life. Thank God at the time I qualified, because having to pay for my energy bills too would have killed me, and I probably would have been out of here, honestly. Well, I didn't last too long at that salesperson job, just shy of a month, like a week shy of a month. But the CEO was on vacation when I started, and I did exactly what they said. I called people, I followed the conversation prompts, etc., etc. I just hardly was getting any sales, and the CEO basically wanted me gone, and they were trying to find a different role for me to fulfill that wouldn't maybe be so sales centered. But apparently nothing was available, so that's what they told me when they fired me. So I felt like about that, and I didn't know what to do for like um, a week, less than a week. But there was like a week in March I didn't work at all, And unlike the third weekday after me getting released that Friday prior, which sucked because I remember driving out of state to grab something and coming back, and a just an ungodly blizzard developing. And that is also another time that I think I passed my ex. So getting fired, seeing my ex, going to the same spot I know I was just at, just freaking sucked, man. But that Wednesday that followed that Friday, I realized, I live right across the street from an employment agency and my car's fixed now. It's not like I have to walk everywhere. So I went in and I signed up for a job at an acid plant that I'm still at. Um, I've been promoted a couple of times. It's pretty cool. But, eventually I'm going to have to look at other things because one thing I do know is it's not going to be like a career thing for me. And in that time, like this would have been a year after my breakup with the second person, I met the third person, and it was really good for a while, but I just had these feelings like I couldn't kick, that it just wouldn't work out long term. So I had to make like a really hard decision in that regard, and I felt like crap about it for a long time, and still do. But when you know, and you just have to do stuff for yourself sometimes. I'm looking to switch up my life a little bit here soon, I know for sure. But I think overall, life's really evened out, I had a lot of trials and tribulations and in an environment where I had little to no distractions, I think. Um, and it was, filled with wonder at first, but I do feel like I've outgrown my circumstances here and would like to try something new. It hasn't all been like a tragic story. I've had a lot of fun here. I've created tons of musical projects, 2 full black metal albums. One sounds like garbage, the other I really like a lot. I started playing with other forms of music again. And I did want to return to YouTube anyhow. I just thought it would be a longer wait. So I was actually starting scripts for video projects, essentially. And another positive was I was just doing a lot of TikTok as well, because it was the only thing I could really do. And I didn't really feel like making YouTube videos for a long time. I mean, guys, there's actually a point in 2022 I almost made a mobile upload talking about how this would be the last video and I would never do YouTube again, on this account at least. But something told me not to do that. Every time I went to film the video, I just ended up disliking how the video is turning out in real time during filming, and I would just stop, start over, stop, start over, stop. And eventually I was just like, well, I'll just try again tomorrow. And tomorrow it never happened, and it never happened again. So that's when I started like posting a lot of videos early last year. But I think eventually I'd kind of like to merge my YouTube account and my TikTok into one unit and kind of make more in-depth, long-form videos on this account and just other types of stuff and short music content on my TikTok. So yeah, that's the plan. Anyways, it does feel good to be back. And this is actually a precursor to a video series that I'm planning soon, where I talk about just general life lessons that I've learned. Yeah. 2024, year of the return. Always.